Today, we're taking a deep dive into the official government warnings about traveling to Iraq. It's a country with an incredible, ancient history, but right now, it carries the absolute highest travel warning possible. So, what's really behind this extreme level of caution? Let's get into it.
This right here, this is the official line from the U.S. Department of State. And notice how blunt it is. It's not a suggestion, it's not a, hey, you might want to reconsider. It is a direct, crystal clear warning. No ifs, ands, or buts. This one sentence tells you almost everything you need to know about the official position.
So, to really understand why that warning is so absolute, we need to unpack what it actually means. We're starting with the verdict itself, Level 4.
And that number, 4, it's a really big deal. In the world of travel advisories, Level 4 is the top of the mountain. It's the most serious warning a government can possibly issue. It basically means the situation is so dangerous that officials believe any travel, for any reason, puts your life at an unacceptable risk.
And this isn't just one country's opinion. There's a solid international consensus here. You got the U.S. Department of State, Australia's Smart Traveler Service, and even the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, all saying the same thing. In fact, the FAA has put out its own specific warnings about the dangers to planes just flying in or even near Iraqi airspace.
So, what does a Level 4 warning mean for you in practical terms? Well, it means there's a very high chance of running into life-threatening dangers. And here's the real kicker. If you get into trouble, your own government's ability to help you is extremely limited. You would basically be on your own.
Okay, so now let's get to the why. Why is the risk considered so incredibly high? Well, the biggest reasons are terrorism and ongoing armed conflict. These are the absolute core threats that make a Level 4 warning necessary. The thing is, the danger here isn't coming from just one place. The security situation is really complex, with a whole bunch of different terrorist and insurgent groups operating all over the country. They're constantly attacking both Iraqi security forces and civilians, which just creates this incredibly volatile and unpredictable environment.
And the kinds of dangers we're talking about on the ground are, well, they're varied and they're severe. We're talking about things like kidnappings, which is a known tactic used against foreigners. You've got improvised explosive devices, IEDs, which are a constant threat on the roads. And the danger isn't just on the ground either. Rocket and drone attacks happen in a lot of areas, including in major cities. And on top of all that, you have anti-US militias that are specifically threatening American citizens and international companies.
So, who's being targeted in all this? The violence is just widespread. Iraqi security forces are definitely a primary target, but civilians get caught in the crossfire all the time, or are even targeted directly. And, crucially for any potential visitor, international companies and the people who work for them are squarely in the sights of these armed groups.
All right, so beyond the organized violence, you've got the unpredictable dangers of just daily life. This next part is all about the risks you'd face just trying to be in the country and get around.
It's a totally fair question. You might be thinking, okay, I get it. I'll just avoid the major conflict zones. But what about something as simple as traveling from one city to another? Well, unfortunately, that comes with its own set of pretty severe risks.
Let's just break down the reality of traveling by road. You might expect to be able to drive between cities, but the reality is you're facing incredibly low safety standards. You might expect official checkpoints to keep you safe, but criminals often set up fake checkpoints specifically to rob people. The situation is so bad, get this, that official U.S. government personnel are actually forbidden from using Baghdad International Airport.
And if that wasn't enough, there's the constant threat of civil unrest. Protests and demonstrations happen all the time across Iraq. And while they might start out peacefully, they can escalate and turn violent with zero warning, snarling traffic, shutting down services, and putting anyone nearby in real danger.
Now there's another whole layer of risk we have to talk about, and this one is a double whammy. It involves both extreme physical danger and some very serious legal trouble, and it all centers on the country's borders, especially up in the north.
The border between Iraq and Syria presents this kind of dual threat. On one hand, just getting near it puts you at extreme personal risk. We're talking kidnapping, injury, or even death. But on the other hand, there's a huge legal risk. You could be arrested, fined, and kicked out of the country by local authorities. And for a U.S. citizen, you could even be labeled as a supporter of terrorism under U.S. law, which is a crime with incredibly severe penalties.
And just to be perfectly clear about those legal consequences, if you cross the border from Syria into Iraq illegally, the official policy of the Kurdistan Regional Government is to arrest you. And we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. This can lead to prison sentences of up to 10 years.
So the big question is, how did it get this way? The situation right now didn't just appear out of thin air. To really get a handle on today's warnings, you have to look back at the decades of conflict that created this kind of instability.
I mean, look at this. You're looking at more than 4 straight decades of almost non-stop conflict. It starts with the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s, rolls into the Gulf conflict in the 90s, then the U.S. invasion in 2003, and then, more recently, the brutal civil war against the Islamic State. Each one of these events just piled more instability on top of the last, creating the dangerous power vacuum that exists today.
You know, after everything we've looked at, from the official warnings to the threats on the ground and the decades of conflict, this assessment really says it all. For the average traveler, Iraq is considered one of the most dangerous countries in the world. And the reasons are, frankly, more than obvious.
And that really brings us to the final central question. When you add it all up, the deep-rooted history of conflict, the active terrorist threats, the dangers of just getting from point A to B, and the fact that there's almost no one who can help you if things go wrong, you really have to ask yourself, is any journey truly worth that kind of risk?